What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Scyushi, and we're back in for some more Trove patch notes. You'll have to excuse that this video is late today. I'm actually not feeling too hot, so I've just been kind of taking it easy. And you'll have to also excuse throughout this video, it might seem like I have a lack of enthusiasm. I actually think that this update is pretty cool. It's got some things that I highly criticize that I don't know why they made these decisions with it. But for the most part, it is a cool update. It's just that I'm not feeling too well. So I want to get this video out to you guys before I don't know, just rest for the rest of the day, pretty much. There's a couple things I do gotta mention before we get started, though. So if you're new to Trove, you can use the sign up link in the description, and then anything you end up buying out of the cash shop, I'll end up making a percentage of that, which is a really awesome way you can end up supporting me by just playing this game. Also, my merch store currently has a deal going on right now where you'll just use the code EARLYBIRDIE, and then you'll end up getting free shipping across the US. And for those of you that doesn't affect, just stay tuned, because when the Black Friday ends up rolling around, I'm going to end up having another coupon code that you guys can use for like 30% off my merch or something like that. So save your money if you guys have always been wanting to get some of my merch and stuff. And just generally, I want to have more deals going on with all that stuff, because we actually have new merch as well. Check it out. Isn't it cool? I really like this one. It's really, really epic. But anyways, we'll get into the update itself. I'd appreciate if you guys would smash like. Helps me out a lot. Helps the video show up in searches. So, Leviathan world bosses are the newest thing. Diligent explorers might find their way to some new world bosses in Geode Topside worlds. The monstrous Leviathans live underneath the surface. There's 3 different variations of the Leviathans. Each is going to end up being in U8, U9, and U10 respectively, right? You guys can check out my stream that I did the other day that'll show those guys off, and the gameplay that coincides with it, which is a little bit boring for some. The biggest thing that kind of sucks about all this stuff is that because the game itself can only end up giving drops to 8 people. That's the biggest thing that sucks about the Leviathan update, is it brings that bad feature of the game, or lack thereof feature, front and center. Because people are getting really, really frustrated trying to fight the Leviathans when there's a chance that if you have over 8 people, you might not even get a drop, which means that your fight was absolutely useless, right? Like, you just wasted your time. So I think that there is a couple solutions that they could have done to rectify this. The reason why this sucks, of course, is because it's RNG on RNG. You have a random chance of getting the drop in the first place, and then when you get the drop from the Leviathan, did you end up getting the rare drop? So the rare drops that you can get from the Leviathans is torches, which I'll talk about those in a minute. Different unique mounts for each of them, based on U8, U9, and U10. These mounts are tradable, and they're extremely overpriced right now. I don't know what idiot would actually buy them. And then on top of that, they have a chance of dropping Crystal 3 gear as early as U8. Now, the chance of them dropping Crystal 3 gear is going to improve as you go into the higher Uber worlds, but I guarantee you that it is not viable. It is way easier to get a Crystal 3 from just farming out in the world, just because of that limitation of not being able to farm these guys and effectively get drops at a consistent enough rate for it to end up being worthwhile. Like, it's just bad right now. One very quick, easy solution that they could possibly do is similar to Shadow Towers, where there would be a chest that drops instant loot just for yourself, and maybe make it so that you have to use cosmetic gems or gem dust or something like that to end up forging a new key. I don't know. I mean, there are solutions that they could do for this, because otherwise right now it is awful. You'll have to excuse Buzz, by the way. She's on my lap right now just chilling, and it's really, really windy, so anytime there's a huge bump, she is doing her cute little puppy bark. So anyways, that pretty much covers the Leviathans themselves. There is going to end up being new badges for the Leviathans. And then there's also going to end up being the torches that I mentioned. So there's going to end up being these fragile torches. There's going to be different torch tiers for U8, U9, and U10 bosses. So the torches will vary from that one that Cool Daddy's got right there is a fragile torch from U8. That is going to end up just giving you a more light value. Here you go, Budge. Get off of me, please. And the light value basically acts as armor penetration. You're going to use that to do more damage to the bosses and just enemies in Geode Topside as well, which, I mean, honestly speaking, we're already killing the enemies anyways. But as you end up farming for these, you can get 3 of them. And then if you get 3 of them, you can end up forging them into a stronger torch. Now, the reason why this is really, really cool is because the torches themselves are inherently temporary. So the ones that you get off of the bosses are only going to last until Trove's next daily reset. And then the ones that you forge from 3 other torches are going to end up lasting until the weekly reset. Then there is a very, very, very rare chance of the boss itself dropping a permanent torch. But here's the thing, gamers, is the light torch is going to end up giving you a decent light value. Then the permanent torch is going to end up giving you the next tiered value, while the weekly torch is always going to end up being the highest light value you can get out of the torches. But of course, the trade-off is that this one's temporary, whereas the other one would be permanent. So I don't know. I don't really have that big of a desire to end up getting the permanent torches, because you can just as easily get the weekly torches so long as you end up getting the drops. I just want to get the mounts and then just honestly, I don't want to farm them anymore, because farming them is just wholeheartedly disappointing unless you end up having a decent enough group while you're fighting them. Now, one thing I do want to mention is a quick little pro tip. When we first dealt with the Leviathans, you know, there was all these different things that you can end up doing where you would basically build blocks up and surround the boss, and I mentioned this in my video of how to prepare for the Leviathan update. That is not viable anymore. When the Leviathan boss is activated, the blocks that you've created in the boss's arena will just slowly start deleting, so you basically just fight them head on. Use a ranged character. Gunslinger's really good. Another thing to consider is you can potion spam. So you basically, to optimize your damage, are just going to spam potions, and then you're going to drop down an origin portal, take it to come back here, use the rejuvenation station to get your pots back, and then you just go through your portal again and fight the bosses. The origin portal is, of course, crafted at the... Yeah, here it is right here. The cornerstone tab in the Adventurer's crafting table is going to give you these origin portals. They're easy peasy to end up crafting. And can end up being very useful just in normal Geode Topside anyways. So they've also added explanation I always say explanation points. It's exclamation. It's just a pronunciation thing that I've always had since a kid. But anyways, an exclamation mark will end up being on top of the new quest characters. So there's going to be a Trovian Adventure Hero, Geodian Adventure Heroes, which you saw previously at the Geode Hub. And then there's going to end up being ones for event Adventure Heroes. These guys don't have exclamation marks or anything like that yet. Also, by the time this video goes up, we should have upgraded. I'm actually going to upgrade this right now, in fact, so that we can end up having some of the higher tiered adventure quests show up, because Adventurine has had a huge overhaul and is actually looking really, really slick, which we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. But for the most part, Club Adventures have been completely overhauled. Adventurine has been completely overhauled, so you end up getting a lot more Adventurine for slightly easier quests, which you guys can read through that in the patch notes. But there's also going to end up being some daily quests that you can end up doing, which I'll show you guys that in a minute, just because those are actually really, really cool. Okay, so anyways, let's upgrade this right here. So that's going to be quite a bit of clue bits, and it might destroy some stuff. Hopefully it doesn't, because the vertical spacing usually is the only thing that it ends up adding to. Excuse me? What just happened? Oh, I see. It destroyed the one that we planted down, and now I have to plant it down again? Yeah, I see. There we go. Yeah, it's pretty much the exact same size, and at least this house is not nearly as disgusting as the other one was. So this basically will allow us to have higher tiered quest NPCs in the Team Pixel Club now. So that's really, really cool, because again, you know, there's been a huge overhaul to all of that. Again, I would recommend that you guys check out the notes themselves, just because there is a huge amount of text, and I just don't really feel like going through all of this today, just because there is just so much that we can end up doing with that. However, I will show you that there is going to end up being adventure quests or adventure NPCs that you can have show up at each of the different biomes. So there's going to be these guys right here. You can only complete one of their quests per day, which absolutely sucks. I wish that they were repeatable, because then you wouldn't have to actually, you know, leave the adventure world. You could just have fun with it. But the thing is that each biome themselves is going to end up generating with some of these guys, and even though you can't see it because of all the usernames, there's actually a unique icon on the map now for these locations that looks the exact same as the one as the outpost that you see in the Luminopolis biome. And the one thing that's also cool is they changed it so that the Luminopolis and Neon City now have different respective colors for each of the biomes, so it's a lot easier to tell which one you're in. There is going to end up being 2 unique quests for both Luminopolis and the Cyber City, so when you end up doing your daily quests, you can go to here and end up getting 2 of the quests out of the way. The other thing too that I want to let you guys know about is that, as far as I know, I don't think that they have a quest NPC here in this starting biome. Yeah, because this is the novice world, so they still don't want to overwhelm players, which means that you're going to have to go to a higher Uber world, unfortunately, in order to end up finding a peaceful hill biome. And then oddly enough, maybe it mentions it somewhere in the patch notes, but I didn't see it. There is going to end up being a new donation station that you will have to donate to in order to complete the Luminopolis daily quest. But there is also going to end up being a unique donation station in the hillside biome. Medieval hills biomes that generate with this will actually have a donation station where you can literally just exchange Glim for a chance of getting adventure boxes. Just normal adventure boxes that normally you would just find out in the world from fighting enemies and stuff. So that's great, because otherwise the only other means that people were using was the one in the Luminopolis, and that one's really expensive because it takes plasmium and stuff like that. Now, that said, when you're completing these guys' quests, once you complete their quest, you have a random chance of getting these. A locked Adventurine Strongbox. Now, these bad boys right here need a key to open, which you have to buy for 500 Adventurine from this guy. And then once you end up opening these, they can end up giving you, a whole bunch of different allies and mounts and stuff like that. But most notably is going to end up being new costumes for every single class in the game. There's going to be a very rare chance of getting an untradeable version of those costumes. But even rarer than that, you can in fact get a tradable version. So it's very, very cool that this update in general is very much geared towards free-to-play players. There's not really any pay-to-win involved. Of course, if I end up finding any of those costumes on the player market that are cheap enough, yeah, I'll end up buying them. They did end up adding, just while I have the topic of pay-to-win, they have a level 25 booster pack, which I wouldn't recommend. I'd say that this is actually overpriced, considering you can end up buying all of the classes for 20 bucks. This will end up giving you 1 empowered gem box of each type, so fire, water, air, and cosmic. If that was a stellar empowered gem box, then maybe I could recommend it, but you can end up getting radiance out of those, which are pretty temporary, and then it'll only end up giving you 1 level 25 boost item, which will immediately take your current class to level 25, which maybe if this was 10 bucks, I still, again, I can't really 100% recommend it, just because of the fact that it only ends up giving 1, which I know that if they ended up giving 2, the pack would end up being not $15. It would actually be a little bit more valuable. But I still think that maybe if the empowered gem boxes were a little bit better, because otherwise that's basically useless. It's good for a starting player, but generally level 25 is not the most difficult thing to end up getting to anyways, which it's not that it's a bad pack and I disagree with it. I just think that the price to the value of the items you end up getting is just not really worthwhile. That's my 2 cents towards it. So speaking of these guys and their adventure quests, this guy will end up giving you a quest to mine nitro. So obviously that's going to be one of the easiest quests in the entire game, just because you're literally going to be getting Adventurine while you're grinding for nitro, which is one of the best ways of making flux. So, and then this guy, complete 5-star dungeons, so you have to complete a couple of them and you'll end up getting even more Adventurine. So it's really nice that they have these guys here more prominently, and the way that, like, the quest that they end up giving you is a lot easier too. So it's definitely good to do. They also said something about these guys. Let me actually see. Yeah, okay. So it's actually this guy right here. So they moved, not him. They moved these guys down here, so you can end up doing their quests. And anyone who's actually actively going for the Geode Cave stuff knows that these guys have been pretty bad, but they're actually pretty good now because they have repeatable quests. They're a lot easier of just going into the different caves and getting all their stuff done. And also, when you complete a Geode Cave adventure quest, it has a chance of providing you with a reliquary, and a reliquary is used to get metamatter and other such resources, which is awesome that we now actually have a much better way of obtaining them. Just because, in all honesty, it was almost impossible to get metamatter just because they're so extremely time gated. Now, these guys are still going to end up being quite time gated, but at least it's a better option than what we've had before. Also, completing the Geode Topside adventures, which is the dudes that we were just talking to, has a chance of dropping a lesser Geode Topside cache. So they also changed some of the outposts in Luminopolis. Apparently, all of the outpost adventure heroes in Luminopolis will now offer one specific adventure rather than just giving you repeated random stuff over and over again. So that's pretty cool. They also made it so that Luminopolis defeat adventure, or the Luminopolis defeat adventures, now only provide credit for the first 3 mobs from any source. So when it's trying to tell you defeat this, defeat that, it's just a lot more streamlined. There is a lot of text here, guys. Again, to let you guys know, you should read through most of this if you guys are curious. I'm just kind of giving you a quick summary because otherwise we'll end up being here all day. But again, for the most part, this update, even though it has the Leviathans, I'd say that they're kind of on the side, considering all of the stuff that they ended up doing with the Adventurine. It's been completely overhauled, all of the numbers and stuff, and I really approve of it. The only thing I don't like is the fact that all of the quests from all the biomes are daily rather than just repeatable. And I did end up talking to a developer back when I was on the test server about it, and there was, I forget what it was. There was a reason why they couldn't do it, because otherwise it was something that players could end up exploiting, or maybe it was just because you would end up getting too much Adventurine and it would have messed with their numbers and stuff like that. Generally, though, I think that there should be more that you can farm in the game rather than all of this time-gated crap, because if players could end up farming for these strong boxes, that would be great, because that would be a fantastic sink for Adventurine, because, you know, you would have to be buying the keys constantly. And on top of it, players would be very incentivized to grind up all of those costumes and stuff like that. But the fact that it's all limited to the amount of people playing means that we have another update that unfortunately doesn't promote people to actively play the game. It more so promotes you to log in, get it done, log out. And that's pretty much everything about Trove these days, which is very disappointing in all honesty. So the additional changes, oh my god, this list just keeps on going and going and going. So I'll try my best to just grab the highlights here. So you'll end up getting a class gem key whenever a class ends up reaching level 25, which is awesome. It doesn't mean that you're going to end up guaranteeing yourselves a really good class gem or anything like that, but the fact is that every player now is very easily going to end up being able to at least get your class gem ability, even if later on you'll have to end up farming for the class gem keys themselves and stuff like that. So that's a really welcome change. All right, they ended up adding some more rare allies to the ally habitats from the harvesting station, so that's gardening 2.0. I really wish that they didn't do that, because the harvesting stations or the what do you call it, ally habitats, those things are pretty jank and stupid in the first place. I don't even have like a club that I know has those things down, so maybe I'll have to try and figure that out. But because otherwise you have to get them yourself. They're untradeable allies, and it's just a little bit more mastery here and there, you know? The large dungeons in Geode Topside are now more than likely to end up being 5 stars rather than 3 stars, which means that it's even more effective farming. To clean up a bit of the grammar in the game, they changed it so that 1-star dungeons are now no longer considered layers, because in some, you know, effective areas, it would actually call them layers. And so they changed it so that the geode caves, you know, when you end up going to a dead end and it's, well, they call them layers. Now they changed it so that those are the layers and dungeons are just 1-star dungeons. They also increased the amount of 1-star dungeons that spawn in the swamp sub-biome of Jurassic Jungle. So that's just, you know, the gooey swamp area, not necessarily the overhanging trees. It's just going to end up having more dungeons more often, which is good, because otherwise it didn't spawn enough of them. They also, to alleviate performance issues for some users, updraft trees inside the canopy biome of Jurassic are a lot less common. So there would normally be all these updraft blocks that would be blowing you up into the air so that you could get over the trees. They've actually removed a lot of those, which ironically, they know that they have to reduce VFX in order to increase performance. But did they realize that they've also ended up adding these torches to the game that go on your back and literally provide extra VFX? Because there's literally going to be tons and tons of players that will have these, and that's just going to end up having a huge performance dip. Even when we're fighting Leviathans, I have a god computer, guys, and I get a performance dip. Like, it's insane. The Gather 3 Trovian objective is going to be a lot less more often, but it is going to end up giving you better loot, apparently. The Dragon's biome in the Drowned Worlds, you know, the Sunken Sea Dragon or whatever it was called, the Acid Dragon, right? Now actually has a claw icon on his world map icon, which is great. They also changed it so that in the Lava Island, like the Fire World, the biomes are now actually going to be separated on the map as well, which is fantastic because now we actually know what is Dead Lava Sea and where dungeons can actually end up generating. Another thing too I want to mention is that there's actually 2 different quest NPCs for the Fire World and the Water World. Because there's going to be this guy, and then while you're out in the world, like you see that top right of us, that's actually going to be a different type of boat than this one. This guy's quest is only going to spawn at the world spawn, and then any of the other boats that you find is going to end up being related to fishing. This also applies to the water world as well. Spike Walker in Shadow Tower should be a lot easier to hit with melee characters. I can guarantee you that this is actually true. Spike Walker is a lot easier now. Shapestone is more common in Medieval Highlands, while Cinnabar no longer spawns in Medieval Highlands. They've also changed a lot of the starting quests that they call Golden Thread. That is going to end up being... They reduced some of them, the redundancy of them, and increased accessibility. Generally, they're going through and kind of tweaking a lot of the text and stuff like that, so it's a lot easier and more instructive to players, which is great. Saltwater Sam over here now actually has the SS Dinghy is going to end up coming with the sail as well, as far as I know, right? So the worn sail will come with the SS Dinghy. It should really actually imply that and say that, but it doesn't seem to, unfortunately. But anyways, there's going to end up being this new sail for some weird reason that they just added to the game. So that I completely forgot about that. That's just free mastery right there. So some of the other dragons had a glitchy auto fire with them, like the Lego dragon and some others. That's actually been fixed so that the fire dragon himself is the only one that has the machine gun fire. You apparently can now craft spear vault style stashes from rune crafting in one of the later tiers. Loot collecting fish at the compost bench, that's the one from gardening, will now actually give you all the rewards back instead of just the trophy, because if you loot collect them, it would actually give you all of the items and end the trophy, but the compost bin, I guess, didn't. Trial classes now can no longer gain experience beyond level 4 as well. Experience coins now give errors when used on a trial class or max level class instead of silently not working, they say. Some of the allies from the promo section have actually been shifted over to the Dev Dream section and can now be obtained through Dev Dream ally boxes, which I guess is cool, but there's no way of actually farming those boxes or getting them regularly, so... And then thankfully they changed the Empowered Gem Box and Sitieri's Water Treasure Urn, which is an item that of course you can't obtain anymore, so I don't know why they bothered, but they changed it so that it says Empowered Cosmic Gem instead of Cosmic Empowered, and then Empowered Water Gem Box. Moonlight bulbs, which are just the plants that you can find out in the world that end up expiring, will now disappear after 3 hours instead of 1. Mounts that plant seeds for Gardening 2.0 will now no longer avoid club world caps, because you could actually use them to plant more seeds than the world cap would allow. It's kind of disappointing that they don't let us do that, because otherwise the Gardening 2.0 still kind of sucks and is really, really slow and time-gated garbage. It kind of promotes people to create multiple clubs just so they can garden instead of actually being something that is obtainable in one world. Also, while we're in the hub, they are going to be getting rid of this gigantic eyesore finally when the hub ends up swapping over to the winter hub. Personally, I think that the hub is due for an overhaul. They either need to hire an in-game player to build it, because the devs builds kind of suck, honestly speaking, just compared to player builds. But on top of that, I think that if they were going to do anything, and if they're going to sit there and say that they needed to make it themselves, I say take all of this crap and move it up there. Because that would be a really cool hub, wouldn't it? Especially because this one is just so dated. Like, the hub should always be something that is really active. I've always wanted that with Trove, where it would be somewhere players would end up kind of all hanging out, and there would be a lot of NPCs to interact with that would end up maybe even just being as simple as, oh, you interact with this NPC, it brings up the cash shop, you know, just for the simple fact that there is something there to interact with. Racing challenges have been altogether removed from the hourly rotation, so No more race challenges, just collection challenges, which I guess is fine. I mean, it's kind of stupid that they're taking those out of the equation. I still think that they should allow us to make our own custom matches for all that stuff and be able to end up earning the dragon coins. We can still end up creating our own racing challenges, but I mean, we all know that the hit detection on those is bogus. Moonlight bulbs will no longer spawn in the shores of the Everdark. The darkness was too much for even these hardy plants to take. Okay. I still personally think that they should get rid of the U9 Everdark because there's literally no distinction between it and the U8 one other than it just being more difficult. They also changed it so that gameplay blocks like vertical jump blocks or turrets can no longer be placed outside of Cornerstone or Club Worlds to prevent loss. They've also added a loot collector to the hub, which is good for new starting players at least. They've also changed it so that the following skins will now correctly change appearances for class gem abilities. So the Boomeranger's Chaos Wanderer, the Draco's Pyro Magical Prankster, and the Tomb Razor's Rabbity Razor. Very cool. So that's going to actually change what your class gem ability is like. That's cool. I like that. So that pretty much covers it, gamers. There is a couple extra notes here that I made that I noticed that they didn't talk about, which was the donation on the hillside biome that I talked about. It doesn't mention that in the patch. Also the fact that the Leviathans have generally just been buffed. And also they did end up fixing the 10k quests. I honestly don't even 100% know what you freaks were doing with that, but it was always considered an exploit and has now actually been patched out. So apparently you can't do it anymore. Anyways, I'll try to get this video out to you guys as soon as possible. It is going to be a little bit later today because, you know, now that I get this done, I'm going to have to take it a little bit easier and relax. I got some soup on and everything like that. And generally, I had a lot of distractions while I was doing this video and some cough attacks and stuff like that. Just, anyways, you guys don't care. Thanks for watching. Excuse the fact that this video was so long. And just in closing, I do want to say once again that even though I actually really think that this update is awesome, I think that there should be some means of us regularly grinding the adventure quests so that we can end up getting more of these boxes. And then further than that, Leviathans are kind of a joke just because of that 8-player limit. So rather than it promoting a community of people fighting these things, it actually promotes more so try-hard groups squeezing together only 8 players and trying to avoid having any extras. Because the thing that sucks about the Leviathans is that only 8 players can get a drop, but they're strong enough that you usually need to have more than 8 people or have to have someone who's really, really good. And the problem is that the game doesn't register who's actually doing damage. So I think that if they could figure it out, maybe make it so that the top 8 people that end up doing damage end up getting a drop, or just generally there needs to be a fix. It's an issue with Trove's game engine itself, why the drops only go to 8 people, but it's way too bogus that 8 people randomly can get the drop, and then on top of that there's more RNG of whether or not you're going to end up getting the item. So this is just the update of RNG, because it's RNG on RNG whether you even get the item, let alone get the rare item. Same with these strong boxes. It's RNG whether through your daily quest you end up getting the box in the first place, and then it's RNG if you get the item out of it. It kind of sucks. Anyways, thanks for watching. Smash like, sub for more. Have yourselves a great day. Sayonara. Stay epic, gamers.